Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming on a wonderful day to our program, Americans and the Porcelain City. We will get to our presenters very shortly, but I did want to just give you a tiny little background about the rationale underlying the development of this program. As you know, at the Met, there's usually something happening at the Met that ties into the program. In this case, it was the reinstallation of the Chinese ceramics on the balcony. We tweaked the installation to talk not only about the history of Chinese ceramics, but also about their continuous and complicated impact in global ceramic history. So, interspersed within the Chinese ceramics are Korean, Japanese, Southeast Asian, Islamic, European, and American works of art. So I hope you'll go peek at everything. And because of this overreaching theme, there are a ton of intertwined stories that are illustrated by or embedded in the ceramics that are on view. One of them focuses on a specific city, a small town in southeast China. You'll be seeing many, many pictures of it in the speeches to come, that is known as Jingdezhen. And it received this name in the early 11th century because the emperor who was ruling at the time, whose nickname or rule name was the Jingde Emperor, actually designated the town as a zhen, or a market town. It has been one of the most important centers for the production of ceramics for over 600 years. It first became particularly active in the 12th and the 13th century when the Porcelain City, that's kind of a Western nickname for Jingdezhen, first began to produce a range of very elegant green glazed ceramics. It transformed global ceramic history in the mid-14th century by working with two technologies that were already known in China, the white clay known as porcelain and the cobalt blue that was being imported from the Arabic world. And in the 14th century, refining both of these technologies and creating what is arguably one of the most successful forms of ceramics, blue and whiteware, or porcelain painted on a white body with the cobalt blue pigment under a transparent glaze. At the same time that this was happening, ceramics continued to become more and more of a global market, traveling throughout the world. So at first, the impact of Jingdezhen was felt in shapes and designs in places such as 15th century Vietnam or 17th century Mexico. And by the 17th century, porcelain technology became one of the most desired things known anywhere. It was first reiterated in Japan in the early 17th century, and then by the early 18th century, through skullduggery, spying, and other things, Europeans managed to make porcelain as well. Since that time, Jingdezhen, this one place in China, has continued to make porcelain for imperial use, for domestic markets, and for trade. And when you talk about trade, you need to be thinking in the millions, not in the hundreds of thousands. Millions and millions of works in porcelain were made in this city and traveled throughout the world. In the last 20 to 25 years, Jingdezhen has reinvented itself again as a center for global ceramics. It not only continues to produce works for domestic use and for trade, but is also a center for artists. And artists throughout the world now travel to Jingdezhen to see other potters, to visit, and to learn. And we have invited 3 distinguished artists, all of whom have worked there, to share with us their understanding of this city and how it's changed how they look at and make clay. All of these artists have won professional accolades, and they've all worked in the Porcelain City. Our first speaker is the renowned Wayne Higby. Mr. Higbee is the first foreign national to be acclaimed an honorary citizen of Jingdezhen, an award he received in 2004. He has been working and teaching in China since 1991. In addition to holding professorships at Shanghai University, the Central Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing, and the Jingdezhen Ceramics Institute, He is also the Robert C. Turner Chair of Ceramic Art at Alfred University. Whoops, what happened to my speakers? Oh, well, Sing Ho, who's supposed to be here. Our second speaker, Sin Ying Ho, ironically first reached Jingdezhen via Canada as part of a study abroad project during her work at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. Sin Ying, who holds an MSA from Louisiana State University, serves as an associate professor of art in the associate professor in the art department at Queen College and has received a great deal of many awards for professional excellence. And our third speaker, who's also part of this little group I seem to have pulled together, is Stephen Lee, who spent the period from 2004 to 2005 lecturing and teaching in China, as well as working at Jingdezhen. He received his MFA in ceramics from Alfred University and has taught at the Emily Carr Institute of Art and Design in Vancouver, the Clay Art Center in New York. He is currently the resident artistic director at the Archie Bray Foundation in Helena, Montana. They will speak one after the other without further interruption from any museum staff. And afterwards, we will be joined by my colleague Jane Adlin from the Department of Modern and Contemporary Art, who is one of the curators who also worked on the reinstallation of the balcony, and we will have a small and short panel discussion. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Higbee, Ms. Ho, and Mr. Lee. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for showing up to learn something about Jingdezhen. Maybe many of you already know things about it, and when we have our panel discussion, you can ask some questions about what's going on there now, what has been going on there in the past. I want to thank Denise and Jane for inviting me and my colleagues to come and talk to you about it. Jingdezhen has been a bit of a passion for me, so it's very exciting to be here and be able to share some things with you about Jingdezhen. I arrived there for the first time in 1992, but my original visit to China was based on invitation to the first International Ceramic Art and Design Conference in Beijing. I was one of 4 people invited from the West. At that time, I met a number of artists and designers and kiln masters and technicians from the city of Jingdezhen. And I went back the following year at their invitation and was just overwhelmed. I knew someday, not specifically that I would be standing on the stage at the Met talking about Jingdezhen, but I was sure something was up. This was a very, very important time in China. Jingdezhen had been a legend, but it had been in the past. And American ceramics and many ceramic artists around the world, curators included, had no idea what was going on in Jingdezhen. It had been, of course, disrupted. Activities had been disrupted based on the Civil War. And then when the communists took over, it was pretty much closed to the West. So my arrival there in '91 was kind of first of sorts, a sort of revelation for me. And I was the first person to show the folks in Jingdezhen ceramics from the West and what we were doing in the international sphere in ceramic art. So that was just fascinating, the kind of warmth of the welcome and the enthusiasm. There was a new spring wind. This is how they referred to it at the conference in '91, a new spring wind that was blowing across China. Of course, you all will know that something about that history. It was very soon after the Tiananmen incident, and I think the Chinese government certainly wanted a new spring wind. So the ceramic world was a good place to start. You know, ceramics has to do with so much technology, so much science, so much engineering, so much art, and China, of course, has the root kind of history of ceramic art. So to bring ceramic artists together and to begin to talk about new possibilities in ceramics and ceramic design was a major move at the time for the Chinese government, who organized this conference in connection with the United Nations Development Association. There are lots of stories, there are lots of tales, and perhaps we'll get to some of that when we talk on the panel. I'm going to give you just a few, just little footnotes here, kind of images, so you have a sense of Jingdezhen. This is a good one. And in thinking about what I might do for you this afternoon, I went and decided, I was looking through some journals. Every year that I've traveled in China, and I've traveled in China and worked in China every year since 1991, I've written a journal. And those journals continue to be really pretty interesting to me. I go back and I read things I thought, things I felt. So I found this journal from January 2001, and I thought it might be interesting to you for me to read from that. It's sort of a, going into someone's private journal, kind of crossing the threshold into the story and being a little bit voyeuristic. Oh, I found a journal by this man who traveled in China. What was that like? Let's read some of that. So, January 6th, 2001, Saturday. There just can't be another place on the planet like Jingdezhen. I'm always overwhelmed, brought to tears by the intensity of this city. Life here exists suspended between ancient and modern times. Jingdezhen is not a tourist destination and therefore real in an important way. Nothing is made up, no fantasy, no illusion. There is so much fact here that excites and challenges the senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. Humanity and survival played out from raw necessity to tender spirit. In Jingdezhen, I always feel embraced by the powerful mysteries of the human condition: earth, gravity, energy, color, pattern, layers upon layers upon layers of history, poetry, and pathos. The city vibrates with an ageless rhythm, crushing stone into porcelain and destiny into courage, kills fire day and night, burning mud into utility and art. Jingdezhen is a city of makers, of craftspeople and artists, of industrial grit and transformative ideals. For some reason I like this one. The streets of Jingdezhen. January 9, 2001, Tuesday. Up a little later this morning. It was good to get some sleep last night. The past few days have been exhausting, but I keep moving, charged up by being in the city, visiting artists, and looking at so much wonderful work. The weather is cold and damp in January. Jingdezhen is a subtropical zone, and the humidity is high. Most buildings, factories, apartments, restaurants, studios have no central heating. It's cold inside and out. The cold, damp air flows through every corner and chills to the bone. Each day I put on layers of clothing, complete with sweater, parka, neck scarf, and hat. I don't remove a thing until I get back in bed at night. Hands wrapped around countless cups of hot tea. I'm constantly warmed by friendship and adventure. The rain, gray sky, and dark, wet streets provide a faultless backdrop to the sparkling, radiant beauty of porcelain, which is constantly caught out of the corner of the eye. It appears in shop windows, market stalls, as well as stacked in carts, pushed and pulled by laborers moving back and forth across the city. It is astonishing to see a 6 or 8 foot tall vase of exquisite blue and white porcelain suddenly emerge from a back alley borne by several men on their way to or from a kill. Today I saw such a sight, and further on I glanced back to see many more huge vases wrapped in straw leaning against crates, no doubt awaiting shipment to the regal entrances of corporate headquarters, embassies, hotels, banquet halls throughout the world. From grit to grandeur is a constant cycle that reveals itself most poignantly in the bleak, mean streets of the Jingdezhen's Chinese winter. This afternoon, I went to Yayo Khan's studio. He is a valued friend. For some magic reason, we share a deep bond. He is greatly respected as an artist and popular as a teacher, one of the undisputed masters of Jingdezhen. Even now, he continues to prepare work for me to see. We discussed his ideas concerning his new sculpture, the timeless porcelain and celadon glaze bringing Chinese tradition and culture into his new image of the child Buddha. I understand this configuration as a new millennium symbol for rebirth and hope. Yayo Khan's work is delightful and profound. It is a result of years of experience which has brought easy skill, great intuition, and intelligence to his desire for a fresh start. Dinner with the mayor of Jingdezhen, we discussed plans for the city's porcelain birthday celebration. In 1004, Jingdezhen was declared the site of China's imperial kills. 1,000 years later, 2004, Jingdezhen will celebrate its centuries-long heritage. A new porcelain museum is being designed, and a renovation of the famous porcelain market is planned. I've been asked to join the celebration committee to help brainstorm events. January 12th, 2001, Friday. Departed Jingdezhen today, woke up thinking about last night's party at Sanbao, a bon voyage gathering held at the insistence of the mayor. It turns out that the mayor is quite interested in our alternative ceramic work center, which is developing, with his approval, in the countryside near Jingdezhen. Chinese artist and educational activist Li Jiansen and I conceived this project back in 1996, and it is now nothing less than a major dream come true. The atmosphere of old China is thick at Sanbao. It permeates every inch of the farm dwellings, now transformed into studios and living quarters for artists. The clock has turned back, and ancient China, fable and folklore, breathe again, as if the lyric of a Tang poem by Li Po had been brought to life. More wine at once, my friends. Have cups to be filled. My dapple mount, my furs worth 1,000. Call the boy. Have him take them and barter for wine. Together we'll wash away 10,000 years. I left Jingdezhen after dinner. It was dark and rainy as we drove off down the twisted back roads of mud and night. A bright, giddy neon arch signaled the entrance to the airport, an unattractive series of airplane hangars and a waiting room. Yayo Khan came to bid farewell, bringing with him a gift of a small porcelain sculpture I had admired in his studio. We sat talking philosophy for 2 hours via Wan Wei Chen, my interpreter and close friend, student and tireless guide, while others spoke of delays, rain, and mechanical difficulties. Finally, a small aircraft arrived, and onto the tarmac we went in the heavy rain, searchlights beaming directions across the empty, black space that stretched out towards the stairway that led up to the plane's interior. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, Jingdezhen. Goodbye, Ayukan. I love you, I yelled as I passed through the door. So we were asked to say a couple of things about our work and how the adventures in China and Jingdezhen may have changed that work. I have always been, as an artist, very attached to things Asian. I'm a deep appreciator of Western culture as well. But ceramics, of course, I think most ceramic artists have a touchstone somewhere in Asian ceramics. This is a bowl of mine from 1991. It's in the exhibition upstairs at the top of the grand staircase. It's very pleasing to see it there. I walk by every time I come to New York and sit and watch people look at it, and I go, I made that. I don't think I'll tell them. If they stay long enough, excuse me, did you know? Anyway, this bowl is made with a kind of earthenware technique that was originally developed in Japan called raku. And I've worked with landscape imagery for many, many years. This is another bowl from a bit earlier period, probably mid-1980s. They're not quite as large as the image on the screen, but they're a good size. And a series of box pieces. These actually, the elements towards the top do come off. This is called Pictorial Lake. And then you can see a rather dramatic change. These pieces were made in the late 90s, about 1996, 97, 98. And they are of just big porcelain slabs. And they were kind of conceived as a sort of memory. They're called Lake Powell memory. But they also, I think, recall Chinese landscape painting. And I think about my friends when I look at these, my Chinese friends. And when I invented the Celadon glaze for these pieces, I was thinking about replicating a Celadon that is famous in Jingdezhen. This one's called 7 Mile Canyon. And this one's called Winter Rain. At that point, I began to do a series of architectural pieces and received a number of architectural commissions. And this piece has just been finished. You can sort of see it through the windows here. This is the Miller Performing Arts Theater at Alfred University. And I've just completed what has been basically a 10-year project in installing 12,000 hand-cut porcelain tile. The piece covers 5,000 square feet, and it joins this building to a building that's adjacent to it. You can see the two pieces kind of reflected into each other. But all of these tile, again, are hand-cut. They're glazed in a porcelain glaze, and the piece has a lot to do with, the friendships, the Chinese friendships, but also friendships with all of the artists that I've worked with, and certainly the students, the amazing students that I've worked with at Alfred University. So it's a celebration of all of that time in history. and also of a friendship with a gentleman named Marlon Miller, who's commissioned this work and also built the building for our campus. It's called Earth Cloud, and it has some idea embedded in it about clouds and also the gravity of Earth. I changed it up just a little. I put 500 gold tile in it. They're actually glazed, but they're made with 18-karat gold. So that's real. And there he is kind of reflecting on the reflection and reflecting on Jingdezhen and his history and ceramics and Alfred and the students. And yes, the whole piece is very reflective. Thank you.